Hey everyone, coming at you today with another kind of discussion video. I haven't done one of these in a little while. Mostly talking about kind of an extension of the networking discussion that I had done a little while back. This one's kind of talking about some more of the pros and cons and just understanding general concepts and looking at the bigger picture, you know. So kind of to start, obviously, with the factors of, at least here in the United States, the two major political parties creating instability, perpetuating ulterior motive, perpetuating various agendas, and causing further division within the country and things like that. You know, all those factors and understood aside, and as a driving force to a lot of individuals and groups to want to bring people together to combat that, kind of moving from that and understanding what the contrast and the adversarial aspects and things like that are when it comes to networking and community and the commonplace and unification of things. There's some things that people need to understand. So when it comes to your localized group, that is a tribe, that is a factional tribe. Okay, it's very small regional sphere of potential influence in a variety of systemics and situations and things like that. Can be effective for your small localized area, but it is not going to contribute all that much to the bigger picture unless there is a greater unification. Looking at history, the Continental Army gets formed. Various Minuteman groups get formed, you know, Rogers Rangers and all these other units, you know, and then the Marine Corps comes around and like all these things. The Navy starts up with assistance from France and things like that. Comes into, even though it is divisional forces and that's just, you know, military structure, that aside, comes into a unified force, a unified entity, as much as the country becoming a unified entity. So taking that into consideration, looking at those lessons from history and bringing it to the forefront yet again when it comes to these factional groups and these factional forces who can and do have, you know, different mindsets and ideas about things and goals about things, you know, and all that stuff. There's a couple of certain categorical and commonplace points that is going to bring a lot of groups together into a unification of sorts. So understanding how that structure builds up. When it comes to personal beliefs and things like that, hey, guess what? Not everyone's going to agree. This is America. This is the United States. You can believe whatever the hell you want as long as you're not hurting other people, right? And that is a positive. Again, protected right. So you've got all these groups and you're going to have all these different viewpoints and things like that. And a lot of personal viewpoints, whether it is personal religious beliefs or certain political beliefs or whatever, some of those are going to be very individualistic, okay? And it should be kept that way in a lot of ways. A lot of that is not and should not affect what the unification in the greater picture is for being united we stand kind of thing, right? That whole saying, united we stand, divided we fall. So with a couple of common correlating factors that can bring unification of a lot of groups and communities together into a greater unified structure, again, historically, that's how the United States came to as well. So it's a couple of commonplace things. So what are those commonplace goals? It's a couple of simple ones, right? It's need for heavy reform of the government, need for heavy reform and limitation and regulation on the government, not regulation on the people. So that's probably the biggest factor right there, right? Just in trying to fix things in the process. And again, you know, with greater unification, you know, that's going to start in these little pockets, but it needs to come together into the bigger picture in a unified structure and system again. So local governance, you know, the right people got to get in office, even if they don't want to do the job for 4 years, 2 years, whatever. If they're going to do the right thing and create reform, limitation, reduce this bloated spending, and everything, again, at the local level up to the national level, that can be fixed, and it should be undertaken just as much as the commonplace structuring and unification structuring of various organizations and groups for the defense of your area and the nation overall. So when it comes to the political spectrum side of it, there is bleed over because, again, who controls who? Completely unregulated defense forces, that is a thing, and that should be a thing. In a sense, not regulated under the scope of government control. Well regulated meaning well trained and organized, of course. That's the whole point of that Second Amendment there. Apart from the protection of being able to bear whatever arms you please. So you have that faction, you have that section, and it is a factional force, but again, that military structure dynamic, and greater unification of factional forces creates organization, creates commonplace, creates a more well-functioning machine to the extent that it is. We all know the military has issues with logistics and function and things like that. But bringing groups together to actually work together more effectively and efficiently is always a good thing. It's also going to help promote, again, that basic set of commonplace goals to promote and push forward the positive effect of that reform and regulation of government and how the country is run and doing right by the people, right? This isn't about left or right here, this is about just fixing things. Okay? Because again, the right and the left, they have ulterior motives. Each side says they're trying to fix things and they want to fix things, but they're wanting to fix things in their way, in a certain way, but that's not effective, and that's not going to fix anything in the long run. It really isn't. So there's a few things that need to be fixed, and then the rest that people say need to be fixed, there are some things that people say that need to be fixed that don't need to be fixed. They just need to be left alone, but that's kind of getting more into the weeds. We're just talking about unification, commonplace, and bringing together factional forces so that we're not introducing the negative effects of tribalism, the negative effects of balkanization. Now there can be some good things about those things. Again, that divisional structure and things like that. But when it comes to tribalism and the balkanization, in essence, that's contradictory to what the United States is in a lot of ways, right? It's supposed to be a unification of the states, into a nation. Stronger that way. When it comes to balkanization, you're fracturing, much like with these factional and fractured and factional tribalistic, organizations, groups here and there. You're fracturing things, which that really doesn't help anything, right? You're weakening different regions then. While they may be able to better regulate themselves because it is on a smaller scale, which can be a good thing. Obviously, there's no denying that. At the same time, you're then creating a whole other set list of hurdles and logistical issues and things like that, and economic issues and things like that you have to deal with. So there's pros and cons to it. There's pros and cons to everything, right? Some cons aren't really necessary. They're not really needing to be factored as a con, because it shouldn't matter. Again, things that should be left alone. There's pros, but again, when it comes to fracturing and factional entities and tribalism and things like that, there's a lot more negatives than there are pros. Having unified systems and a unification of people into the American tribe, the United States of America tribe, is always going to be stronger than smaller factional tribes. I mean, Again, look at history. You can look at any tribal warfare throughout Africa. You can look at the tribalistic warfare of smaller nations throughout history across the globe. And the bigger, stronger one is always going to come out on top. Generally. Semantics there. We're not going to get into that. History lessons, though, that's the case. So, keeping the unification of the United States of America tribe is always going to be better than having a factional system. So again, circling back, there's a simple set of common goals that all of the factional groups can agree on that is going to work towards a commonplace, a better organization, and a unification for the reform, regulation, and limitation of government in a lot of ways. Again, there's a lot of things that can be just left alone, you know. But then there's the things, especially when it comes to what's wrong with the country, and so that's mainly with politics and governance, but also, you know, some economic issues, obviously right now, you know, and things like that that we should be fixing and can be fixed in due time with, again, the right unification and the pushing forward of doing things the right way that doesn't cater to either side's political bias or ulterior motives. Okay? The two-party system sucks and it's broken. It's just a fact. So, working towards some of these common goal sets, okay, and working together with all those things, you can be effective. But it's going to take communication or an organization, and it's going to take people stepping up to do jobs that they don't necessarily want to have to do, but it's only for a short period of time, really, to really get things in motion, get the tables turning to fix things and just do things the right way, you know. So that's kind of the point of this whole discussion here, is really there's a lot of these individual factional groups that have their own thoughts and views on how to do things, you know, and some of it is okay because that's spread across all these different groups. They have some things in common. There's a lot of other things that don't have in common, and that not everyone's going to agree with. And guess what? A lot of the time that's individual and personal opinion or belief or whatever. That does not matter to getting done what needs to get done in the bigger picture of things. So that's kind of the discussion. I'm kind of circling back to a couple of things here, but again, they're the core principal points about these things, about all the things. So that's why I'm doing it that way. So sorry, my messenger's kind of blowing up, so you probably hear some beeps and pops and shit with the messaging and everything. But yeah, that's really the point of this, is united we stand, divided we fall. It's core principle. It's core principle, at least here as Americans in the United States. So people need to get on the same page. Don't be interjecting your personal biases and beliefs into something that is a very much objective, in a lot of ways, spectrum of things. The objectivity of governance and economics and things. Those are the things that need to be focused on to be fixed. With more individuals coming into groups and working together and things like that to build up unification and to just do the right thing. Okay. So that's about all I have for this discussion. Again, it gets a little more philosophical. It gets a little bit more, I wouldn't say academic, but a little bit, you know, and just some of those things. These are just things that people need to understand, you know. Extremist Christians are just as much as a problem as Islamic extremists. Extreme leftists are just as much of a problem as extreme right-wing. You know, those are all issues, and again, biases and ulterior motives and agendas and personal beliefs when it comes to all those things cannot be injected into the objectiveness of what needs to be done with governance and economics and all the things that need to be reformed, repaired, and move forward together as a nation. That's really the whole point here. So, thanks for tuning in. Metal up.